Good morning and welcome back to Reaper Pro-Tips with me, your host, Anne. And, oh no, we're without Quindy today. Justin, are you there? I hope. Justin or John. We are in the hands, the disembodied hands of Justin and John. Yes, Quindyless. Quindyless we are. Oh, y'all, just with your horse puns. Yeah, I know. We want to have. So, Justin, just so you know, even though I can't hear you, because of course, you know, we determined my computer doesn't like Discord in the stream. But just so you know, Quindy wanted us to ask you for lots of links today. You know, lots of links. But I think we can spare you. I think we can. But yes, we have no Super Quindy today. We have only Justin and John. They will try to rise to the occasion. I'm certain. Not really. No. We missed you guys. We get John in the chat every once in a while. But yes. So Justin's probably already ignoring us. If he's smart, he is. I am just gonna move some stuff off. Do you guys want to do like white markings on the horse's legs today, or would you rather we start on the skin tones? Quindy free Twitch TV, meaning we're abandoned, really. It's not a good thing, I don't think. Let's see here. I want to get in focus. And take a look at Horsey. Horsey's looking good. Everything looks nice. I'm very happy with my Appaloosa. All right. So no opinion thus far from chat. That means I get to choose. Let's see here. I wonder if we can mix a skin tone with Pendrake has at least given us a venture. Thank you, Chendrake, for your chiming in. I had kind of already decided skin anyway. We'll go back to Horsey Bits. We spent a lot of time on Horsey Bits, so yay, Kurtiko. Hello, Level 20 Gaming, and hey, Bob and Julie. And I'm gonna hand mix a skin tone today. Because we used Griffin Golden Brown to highlight up these horse bits mixed with our ruddy leather, I'm actually going to use this to create a skin tone. And that's perfectly like doable. It looks it's a little bit yellow here on every yellow. We're yellow. Hold on. Sometimes my camera is be like, hey, there. Now we're a little bit better. So we're going to use this color and we are going to mix it with some red tones to create a skin tone. And you can do this with any sort of golden brown. You usually want it to be fairly intensely yellow, and Griffin Golden Brown does have a lot of yellow in it. Not as much as it's showing on camera, but you're not a fan of giving him socks? Oh, I totally am going to give him at least one sock. One sock at least. Because, and the reason I would do it is because I've already got white here. So in order to balance out this patterning, I feel like I want a sock probably on this lower leg and this upper leg. So I'll be doing that. Because I feel like to balance out the white markings, I would like something to balance that out. That is my rationale. So I'm going to use this. And really you can use almost any red with it to create a skin tone. You do want to use something that's a little brighter, a little bit more like a primary color. Yeah, it's that day, huh? Well, maybe I'll make the stream short. I see. They're happy with the earlier stream because they get fed. All right, well, that's cats. They're probably happy whenever they get their ants. So let's try this then. I also wanted a bit of a darker skin tone on him, so I'm going to see what I can do. Now, the other thing you can do is with this color is you do not have to use a primary red if you don't want. You could actually use just a reddish brown. So we could actually go in with our ruddy leather and create just a dark skin tone based off of the horse color. And that's actually a great idea. I think I'm going to try kind of an in-between mix of what I was going to start with then. So first I'm going to do 4 drops of our Griffin Golden Brown, which gives us a very, very ochre color, as you can see. It's ochre with a bit probably of brown oxide. Well then, put me on a phone and go for a walk, Nomad Zeke. I'm going to put 1 drop of Ruddy Leather in here. And then I'm going to put a drop of red. And I think the red, usually with skin tones, you do want to use close to a primary. And if you use something with purple in it, it's going to mute the skin tone, which actually isn't terrible considering what we're doing. If you want to use something more neutral, use something like Heraldic Red. You can also use Clear Red, obviously, because Clear Red is a primary red. It's the brightest red we've got. It's also, though, very, very strong. I think I'm going to use a drop of Heraldic and see what I get. Actually, you know what? I'm not. I'm going to be smart. I suddenly realized I should be smart. So, okay, since I'm being smart, what we should do is mix this up first, see what we've got, and adjust accordingly. If you're not like a pro, like I was pretty sure I could go for that drop of red, but the best one is honestly the old chestnut gold if you have it. Tanned leather is not actually the closest. Probably leather brown is much closer than tanned leather. Because this is darker, but be warned, both tanned leather and leather brown have white in them, so you're not going to get the richness of color that I'm going to get here. So it's going to be slightly different. Honestly, in our you'd be better off mixing the Kickstarter colors. You'd be better off mixing mostly yellow oxide, oxide yellow with a little bit of oxide brown, and you'd get close. So all right, this gives us a very rich golden brown color. However, for a skin tone, you really do need some rosiness. Chestnut gold, rather than chestnut brown. Yeah, then use chestnut gold. It's actually still not as saturated as this one, though. Griffin Golden Brown is actually one of my new favorite colors. Given the option of using the old chestnut gold or this one, I would use this one. I consider it an improvement. All right, here. I am just had to declog my red. Yeah, don't use brown. Cream is actually yellow, Agent Marvel. So like you want he's got okay, so that's a terrain. So if he's got a desert color that's kind of a gold that's got some brown in it, then it would be great. But essentially if he takes that pinkish, that brownish pink, and he just adds a drop of yellow, he'll get a cream. So, all right. Got too much red sitting here staring in front of me. So yeah, using clear red can be fraught with peril, as it does have a lot of pigment. So it would shift this a lot more. Ah, come on, I just unclogged you. Yeah, cream is really a yellowish off color, which you should be able to see. If you look at that brownish pink and you compare it to a picture or a swatch of a cream, you should plainly see that the cream is more yellow. So when you see that, your action should be to add yellow. Color mixing is not hard. Much of it is intuitive. The only time you get into trouble is when black is in the mix. Then you can get some problems, because if you've got black in the mix and you add yellow, then you can get a greenish color. But if you are working with a color that is just, giving you like just a reddish brown, and you added white and you got, pinkish brown, then it should follow that you add yellow. Like, trust your gut. Learn to trust your gut on this. It's very, very logical. Unless you see that ashy gray look. If you see that the color is kind of gray, that's where adding yellow doesn't work for you. But don't make, color mixing is not difficult. A lot of people make it more difficult than it is. The basic rule is if you look at it and you can see plainly that it's not yellow enough, just add yellow. The only exception is if there's a lot of gray. There we go. Now I can get some heraldic red finally in this. Just a touch, probably about half a drop there. I just kind of like touched it down and didn't squeeze a full drop out because I didn't want to turn this so hard. Now that's very red. That's gone very red. That's what I talk about, red being a very overwhelming color. Now I'm going to add, now we could use this as a starting tone, even though it looks really weird. We can mix all our colors from here. So let's dab some over here. I'm going to add a tiny touch of white to it. Maybe I'll add a cream, actually, since we're talking about cream. Maybe some creamy ivory, which is essentially the same as adding yellow, brown, and white. So 1 drop of that. No, I'm not using clear red because it's too heavy. That would have been even more pink. So now we're going to see how pink we got it. So yeah, this went very, very pink. So it's a very ruddy skin tone right now, which is not a deal breaker, actually. The way to deal with it would be to do this. 1 drop of our original golden brown. 1 drop of that. Because when you're mixing skin tones, you're usually adding yellow, some sort of yellow color and white to go up, or yellowish brown and white to go up. That's much nicer. So essentially I'm mixing a little bit of a progression here, but starting with this deeper, redder color is not a deal breaker. Like, it actually can work for us quite well. I'm going to actually darken it just a little bit by adding in some of our original mix. So this is something that my portraiture book does that I've been playing with, where it mixes an initial mix, and then everything else you're doing off of the skin tone is just adding different colors to that initial mix. And because, remember the way I usually paint, where you always have a little bit of the previous color in the color you're going to, as far as highlights and shadows, this works directly from that, because every color you mix then for the skin tone is going to have this base kind of core color in it. Even if you never actually use this color, every other color will be based from it, and so they will all work together. Yeah, cause and trauma. Sorry, I missed that. This is all Reaper, and this particular model is from the last Bones Kickstarter, Bones 5. In the Greek Odyssey set, they did a cool Centaur, so I decided to paint him on stream today. The other minis that we paint in a rotation, so we work on like 6 different models, but like just finished up the Ogre here. We are working on... We just yesterday worked on a mage, so we're working on her, things like that. So yes, this is the Reaper miniature stream, and so we only paint Reaper on here. I do my own stream on Saturdays at around 3:30 USA Central Time that I paint pretty much everything, all sorts of stuff on, but in the mornings I do the Reaper stream. So we're not only using just Reaper minis on the stream, we're also using Master Series Paint, Reaper's line, which I created for a long time ago. Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to do a rich kind of reddish bay and do the Appaloosa patterning. All of these stuff, every single episode of this show, Cause and Trauma, it goes to VOD, of course, here on Twitch, but then it also goes over to Reaper's YouTube. So you can actually follow every single model we've painted for the past couple years. From pretty much start to finish over on the YouTube. You can search it by item number or by, if you look at, just kind of scroll down and you see a mini you want to kind of look at, a part of, you can search for that mini's name and get the whole series of that mini. So if you want to see how we did the Appaloosa pattern, you could go back and watch the last couple streams on this model and the horse. Yeah, I've got almost 500 episodes now, Cause and Trauma, just on this show alone, and Reaper has other shows on there too. But yes, we are almost to 500. I've been doing this for a very long time. All right, so let's see. I'm interested in this. I'm going to start with a really reddish undertone. And actually, this is something I used to do on Vikings. I used to paint a fair amount of historical. I really enjoy doing ancients, so Vikings and Egyptians and such. And what I would do is if I was working on someone who I knew had been out in the weather a ton and would have like deeply like sun and wind-burned skin, I would start with a very reddish color. Okay. Yeah, well, eventually this should also come out. Reaper slowly releases everything from the Kickstarter. So this model should come out at some point. Oh man, I forgot to do the green work. Oh no, guys, we can't do the skin. We have to stop and do green. I totally forgot that because I got so happy with the horse parts that I forgot to do green work. So we're going to do that. 1 second. I must grab my green stuff from the other room. Okay, impromptu gap filling lesson. I could also try to use one of my sculpting pastes, which would set quicker, but Yes. So the other thing to mention on the subject of Reaper Kickstarters is if you are looking for a bunch of models very cheap, that you should keep an eye open on the 31st of this month. The end of this month, Reaper launches their new Kickstarter, as they have pretty much fulfilled the Bones 5, and now they're just like trying to put things, put things actually on sale from Bones 5. So Bones 6 is launching. And if you order from Reaper right now, you can get one of the preview minis, free preview minis. They go together to make a little adventuring party. But you can also get the QR code, and you can go to this link, reapermini.com, Chaos Bones 6, to sign up to be notified when the Kickstarter goes live. If you are not familiar with Reaper's Bones Kickstarters, they tend to go huge into the millions, and they tend to also, the base core set, as we call it, usually is around 120, 130 bucks. And you, by the time it's done, you end up getting over 100 minis in that set. So, yeah, I know that, Pendrake. We said we were going to green stuff it before, and we just didn't get to it. I know there's a gap. I am well aware. So we're going to green stuff today. I didn't plan to green stuff today, but we're going to green stuff today. And then we'll probably paint the other arm just because we have our colors mixed up, so we can test this skin tone. So green stuff is blue yellow putty. Squeeze off about, well, that's way too much, but squeeze off about equal amounts. Usually you can go a little heavier on the yellow if you want to be smoothing green stuff into things like muscles. The more yellow you have in it, the softer it is and the easier it is to kind of stretch really thin, whereas the blue makes it harden a bit more. But you don't want to get too much out of whack as far as the percentage of each, or you will get a putty that doesn't cure. So right now I've got about that. With the blue a bit less, I'll grab a little bit more blue. And you really only need a tiny amount. This is way too much. The general rule is that, no matter how hard you try, you will always have extra green stuff, or you will have not enough green stuff. You will never have the perfect amount. I mean, I always tell people to use tan skin. If you're new and you don't like mixing, or you don't get it yet, start with tan skin. Always, always start with tan skin. It is super easy to do highlights and shadows for, and you can make it go any way you want. You can add the red-brown that I did here just to get a slightly darker skin tone, or you can add white to get a slightly lighter skin tone. It is the easiest thing in the world. It is the most versatile skin tone we put out. And I always have a bottle of it, because if I want to just do a fast skin tone without doing hand mixing, I would do that. Skill 75, all of their paints are designed for mini painting. Like, Skill 75 does a crap ton of paints for mini painting. So, what is the whole point of them, I wonder? I wonder if they're copying us and doing an extra flow improver in the formulation. I wonder if that's why the name, guys. Somebody may have finally listened. After all these years, after over 17 years of me saying, Reaper Master Series is awesome because we add flow improver to the formulation so you don't have to, and it flows better out of the bottle. Scale 75 may finally have copied us. Okay, Pendrake. There is no Quindy today, Twisted Oma. This is Quindy. Quindy had something to do today. We are at the mercy of Justin and perhaps John. You should absolutely, yeah, don't start with the fair skin. I think it works better with darker shadows. With all fair skin tones, I think people back off on the shadows. All right, so I've got my green mixed up. Now it's actually green. Now you can see why it is called that. I keep just a bag. I keep it in there to keep it from sticking to other things around it. And it also is very useful to just kind of keep your little green stuff blob on. Then I can take, these are old, these are wax sculpting tools, which are also very similar to old dental tools. And I have a set of them, but you can use a whole bunch of different shapes. For this one, I'm using my small spade. And I'm just going to kind of put that up there. Now you have to dip your sculpting tool in water or some other sort of lubricant in order to get the green stuff to not stick to it. And I'm going to just start shoving that into that gap. It's going to be real rough off the bat. You can see I'm just patting it in there. Oh, they're oils. Interesting. Okay. You see, yeah, you didn't say, I didn't catch the oil before, Crows. Interesting. So they're going, everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. Ah, the bandwagon. Everybody loves the bandwagon. I've got a little bit too much water on here. Big bubble of water. That happens. Just like take a Kleenex and kind of, you know, pull a lot of it off. That's why I keep Kleenexes around here. Now we can just start kind of squishing this down, getting it kind of in line with where we want it. And when I still have too much water, again, I'm going to grab the Kleenex. Because as I get it smoothed down, I want less and less water. Because I don't want the water to like flow into the gaps that I need to fill. So that's cool, Kariniko. Yeah, more and more people getting interested in oils as they see what really good painters can do with oil. It does make blending easier if you're willing to deal with the slow dry time. And you must, I hate to say this, but you do need to mix. I expect why it'll have a little bit harder of a time getting traction. Maybe not totally, though. I think maybe the time is right for people to really be keen on trying oils for mini painting. But be aware, you gotta mix. Unless Scales Color has put out like something that's very styled like a miniature paint. Maybe it is. Maybe that's why they say it's for miniature painting. Flow is a weird title for it. So essentially, because this is a metal tool, I'm not going to be able to get... And because it's a big metal tool, I'm not going to be able to get real fine with it to blend things in here. So once I finish shoving the putty where I want it, pretty much there, I'm going to move to a softer tool and a smaller tool. Let me see here. I think I'm just going to go softer today. Tiny spoon's around here somewhere, but we're going to go to a clay shaper, which is a thing that's a silicone sculpting tool. I really like the round. I find it's easy to smooth things with, and it still has a bit of a tip so you can poke things around. This is the extra firm. I find the extra firm to be the only useful one. The soft ones just don't have enough purchase, in my opinion. Taper point is the shape, which is the cone, and the size is 0. These are made for clay, but they work extremely well with green stuff, and because they're silicone, you don't need much lubricant or much water on them to make them soften things down nicely. They don't tend to stick to the green as much. That you could take that perspective, Eleanor, although I will tell you that we have a local guy here, AJ, who's a competition level painter. And he didn't get like as far with acrylics. He decided to switch to oils and his painting got much better. So it doesn't always follow that you have to be good with one medium before you try another. If you are frustrated at all with acrylics, specifically in the difficulty of getting like wet blending to work or something, then you don't have to wait. I mean, there's nothing on earth, and we would in fact not have a number of very good painters right now if they had swore they had to master one medium before progressing to the next. So depending on your journey, where you are, just don't lock yourself in. I'm just saying, like, it could be perfectly the right road for you, that you enjoy acrylics and you want to maximize your ability with them before you move on to oils. That's totally fair. But just don't think you have to do it that way, because often switching mediums, especially if you're having trouble or you're getting frustrated with a particular medium, switching to one that's completely different, although there is a learning curve, can actually help sometimes. Yeah, they're not great at marketing. Scale 75. Oh, yuck. Yeah, I keep telling people the green stuff is not non-toxic. Like, you want to be careful with it, and you always want to wash your hands after using it. I'm going to get a little tiny bit more green and just kind of scrape it off. Now you can see it kind of sticking to this metal tool because I didn't add water beforehand because I didn't want to get a bunch of water on that. That's not a big deal. I can easily scrape it off the metal with my fingernail. And if I don't get it all, which I won't, once it has cured on here, I can just use a knife to scrape off that little extra bit, which you want to do because otherwise it will stick to itself with great passion and efficacy. Right, then you don't want to go to oils because it won't help you with your goals. That makes sense, Felindar. I just wanted to just tell people you don't have to. Although that mindset is perfect for your purpose as you just defined it. Just everybody else be aware. You don't have to do it that way. You don't have to master one thing before going to another. I was decent at my last medium of choice, but I was certainly not master level at it before I decided to go into acrylics. So. Grey Wolf, you should be watching my YouTube. If you're working on base coats, my YouTube shows you how to do a perfect base coat. And we're starting to, I'm probably filming that, I've outlined my newest video for that free series on my YouTube. So, assuming that we don't have the link because we don't have a Quindy, my YouTube is, if you go to YouTube and search for Painting Big, all one word, you should find my YouTube. And I'm doing a free series on miniature painting fundamentals that shows you base coats, washes, how to mix your own wash, talks a little bit about my top 5 tips for new painters, and I just did another one on additives. We're going to be going into color theory as well, because color theory has a lot to do with highlighting and shading. So we'll do both. We'll do the mechanical stuff, but we're also going to work slowly into conceptual stuff over there. And so many people have trouble with color theory, and it is kind of my superpower, so I'm going to do that. Now, when I want to really blend this in, I can use this cone shape and just roll it across the surface. This is one of my favorite things about this shape of clay shaper, is that in rolling it, I can get a beautiful smooth finish and really get that in there. Honestly, Grey Wolf, if I were you, I would just get a model that's similar to the Templar that I used on that base coating thing, and I would just paint along with it. It's only a 10-minute video or less. Practice Practice putting extra. Remember, you've got to thin the paint just a little bit, and you got to put extra paint on. Don't put a real thin layer of paint on. That's the big mistake I see people make. That's what leaves brush marks. You want to have a fair amount of paint on the model, and as long as you've got water in it, you're not going to get a problem with it cracking or doing anything weird like sometimes thick paint will do. The water helps it not do that. So it's called deliberate practice, and it will improve you very quickly, but it does take you sitting down and treating those videos like you are taking a class. So sit down with that base coat video and practice what it shows. Do it for like an hour, maybe a half an hour if you don't have much stamina on the mini painting front. And you will find that it will not take you long to master base coating. That's very true, Max. Also having fun. Although the thing is, it really depends. Like, there's kind of this point where fun and learning meet. And that is the deliberate practice thing. And a lot of people disagree on deliberate practice. Scientists found that most people, like in sports and the arts and stuff, didn't find deliberate practice to be particularly fun. Because you're working, right? You're trying to concentrate. You're treating it like it's a class, and most of us didn't have fun in school. Now, if you can approach that learning with a spirit of fun to it, just like if you could approach your classes in school with a spirit of fun, hey, I'm going to learn something cool, and this is actually pretty neat, and so I'm having fun, you can, get around that mental block, so to speak. But if your goal is to get better, if you are willing to concentrate a bit and not just approach it in the spirit of fun, but to actually learn, you can get much better much faster, is pretty much. So it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to just paint, have fun, and slowly get better, you can do that. You can do that absolutely. But if you're sick of not being able to do a good base coat, it would really pay to take, a half hour on one Saturday and a half hour on the next, sit down with that video and just base coat. And by the time you're done with that, you're going to have so much of a better grasp of what you're doing right or wrong, and you're probably going to be a lot better at base coating. Thank you, Turgeon. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah, I don't put gloves on either, but I do have a slight latex allergy, but I don't react to green. And there's no Mad Zeke with the Patreon. Yes, I also have a Patreon. It is full of goodness and lots of instructional videos. So I've got a little bit of a lip here where see that crease there? I think I probably need to let that set for a bit before I might be able to green stuff over it. It's just filling in this gap. What I would do, in an ideal world, what I will do here is, because this shoulder, I want it to blend in. And right now I've got that little edge lip there where the whole thing was supposed to be glued together. But this is looking really good. Like the green stuff, like going into the muscles here, and the sculpting and blending is looking really good. I don't want to mess up this green stuff that I already did. And so what I will do is actually let that set, because if I let it set, then this becomes solid, and I can put a thin skin of green over to disguise this bunched muscle, disguise this crack rather. If I try to do this now, the green is still too soft, and chances are I'm just going to continually be seeing this crack, and I'm going to mess up all the stuff that I've got, all this nice blending that I've already got on the green. So sometimes often it does really count to just wait, let your green set for half an hour or even an hour, then go back and do one more little bit, even if it'll mean mixing up more green, but yeah, it depends also, like, real POTUS. It really does depend on your goals, right? Because yeah, and I'm doing that, right? I'm trying to paint 2 models for every 1 model that I buy, because I get overwhelmed otherwise. And it also drives me to finish more things, which is really rewarding for me. It helps me fight resistance. It helps me fight that pushback that my creative impulse gets when it's afraid to finish a piece because it's afraid it won't turn out well, or it won't turn out as well as I wanted, or, you know, all of that sort of thing. But yeah, it can also be like producer versus consumer balance can be very useful because as you note, if you're always watching videos but you're never practicing, you won't get better. That's kind of where you can get bogged down, you know. And this happens to writers too, right? Everybody sits and reads a bunch of writing books and watches a bunch of videos on like how to whatever, but they don't actually do the work, and so they don't get better. And it's the same in almost any pursuit. You know, I wouldn't paint over freshly applied crows. I would let it at least get a soft cure. I've painted over green stuff that I laid down an hour before with no problems. It depends on the temperature, though. Because if it's really cold in the room, the green may take a long time to cure, and an hour may not be enough. But I have painted over green that, like, on a fairly warm day, I can get a pretty good cure with an hour. Enough to paint over. I haven't really had a bad result. I mean, as Pendrake points out, rushing doesn't, you know, when he says wait for it to cure, rushing really doesn't benefit you because it could react badly. Yeah, that's true. Greens, Bob and Julie, you are pros. So Green Users points out, I can take my little bit of green here that I have mixed up, and I can put it into the freezer, and that will actually keep it from curing and keep it good. Then I can whip it out in an hour and use it to finish the last bit of this shoulder. Then I wouldn't have to mix up another bit of green. And obviously, being green users, they know. Like, and this is why I love you guys on the show, because I never think about this stuff. And you guys are like, oh, just pop it in the freezer. And I'm like, that's brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? So I'm just getting a little bit green here. There's a little bit of gap on his tummy that I want to smooth in. I love how the clay shaper just lets me kind of push and pull the putty around very gently and stretch it out and get it to kind of be smooth, because it isn't a hard sculpting tool, so it doesn't leave, you know, it doesn't leave nearly as many tool marks. I mean, milliput, sure, as long as it's fine. If it's the fine milliput, obviously if it's a textured milliput, it's not as ideal, POTUS. But milliput is great because it's like similar to Abe's epoxy sculpt. It can be thinned with water. So if you did this, if you added some water once you had it in place, you could essentially make it thin down and blend it in that way. Whereas green stuff is not water soluble, which is a plus and a minus. Sometimes you want the solubility and sometimes you don't. So, but I used to use Abe's a lot, and milliput's very similar on that. So it doesn't really matter what filler you use. Some are just easier to sculpt with in particular ways. And I find that some of the clay-like putties, like milliput, work a bit, sometimes are a bit easier to start with. But if you can learn to use green stuff, it can be very rewarding, because for sculpting, for conversions where you must do a little bit of sculpting, I think green is very superior. Green is just, it's harder to work with, but I think when it comes down to shapes, especially curved shapes, where you need kind of a smooth transition, like musculature, or you're blending a body into a horse body, or whatever you're gonna do, you know, blending a head, an alternate head into a neck or whatever. I just think that green is very, very good at that. But that said, people have used different putties to do all this sort of thing before, and so it's okay. Yes, you can mix Aves and green stuff to get something in between. You can also mix Sculpey and green stuff. There is a ratio, though, that you don't want to, like, you definitely want to use at least as much green as you do Sculpey, and usually more green than Sculpey. Am I right, Bob and Julie? Because otherwise it won't cure. because you need the heat reaction from the green to cure the Sculpey. I'm going to put this little dab of green stuff into the freezer, just like Julie suggested, guys, so that we can come back and fix that shoulder in a second. One moment. All right. Yes, it'd be nice to have more Centaurs. Yes. Yeah. Milliput, as Green User says, yeah, Milliput sets up like rock, where green has a bit of flex. Yeah. Less likely to crack. Yep. Good point, Julie. So if you didn't know, Real POTUS Green Users is Julie Guthrie and Bob Rodolphe, who Julie has sculpted many of Reaper's beautiful dragons. For many, many years now, they have worked for Reaper. Longer than I have. And I'm headed for my 19-year anniversary in April. Okay, don't get the ratios off too much from 1 to 1. Thanks, Julie. Why are you Julia today? Why am I just like, ugh? I needed more caffeine. All right, so let's practice our skin tone real quick on this one arm, which, as you can see, is isolated, right? So you've got a strap headed under here, and you've got the spear and the shoulder, the armor here, and then the hair down here. So this arm is essentially kind of a separate section. It's got these straps kind of keeping it away from the rest of the body stuffed here. And so that means that this is a great section to attempt this skin tone on. So I'm going to grab my base coating. I'm going to use my Optima. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted you to know that they are like total pros. They are awesome peeps, and I love that they hang out on my stream. You'll run into that with a lot of Reaper streams, though. Like, well, obviously the Crow's Nest, Jason Wiebe is also one of our accomplished sculptors. Michael Proctor is one of our, staff painters, a very gifted staff painter. And then the guests that they have on are usually Reaper sculptors or painters, or industry people. Is that what you call Ron, an industry person? I have to add a little water to my paint here that we mixed up because then we got distracted by green. And I don't want to lose my colors here. Normal lol, yeah, right. Yes, but Julie and Bob are rather epic tier legends. They may not feel like it, but they are. Yeah, so a lot of the sculptors and painters who work for Reaper POTUS are an amazing group of people who love to engage and interact with our audience. All of us do. I think I can't think of an exception off the top of my head. That's why we do ReaperCon in Labor Day weekend in Denton, Texas, which is where Reaper is HQ'd. And when we're there, we love to engage with all of you guys, all of our fan base. So see if that looks a little bit pink. That is very, very rosy. It's almost a sunburn color, actually. I'm gonna go with it though. I'm gonna actually put it on and see how I feel about it. I did get a little bit too much and it is flooding a bit, but that's okay. So see, I've got a little extra down here. But because I haven't painted the spear, that's not a big deal. That said, this is very similar to a color that I used to use for windburned skin. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush though. I got my paint a little bit more fluid. When your paint gets a little bit more runny, when you add a little more water, using a bigger brush to base coat isn't as good of an option because you want to be able to guide that paint. And so moving to a smaller brush can help. I did get a little thin on this, but that's all right. I washed my mini, so it's sticking. Which is one thing, if you are working with Bones miniatures, I do advise washing them. I never prime them. myself, although other people do. Be careful what you prime them with. Definitely look it up on the interwebs. Some primers do not work well with bones. But in general, I do not prime them. I just wash them in hot water with a bit of dish soap and then let them sit out to dry overnight. And I find that I can work with a thinner base coat then and not worry. So that is a very... Yeah, this hobby is kind of addictive. Okay, to me, yeah. Yeah, see, that's a bit pink, but I'm going to put regular skin tone over it, like the one that we mixed that's a little warmer, and see if I like that. So let's actually do that on the hand. So yeah, when you do a weird skin tone, when you mix one up and you're not sure, find a part of the mini. Yeah, I think I like that a little better. Find a part of the mini that is a little isolated so you can, do a base coat on it without worrying about leaving an edge where it just stops and without worrying about painting the whole thing. And just fill that in and see how you can work with it. See if you like it. Although, I have done that kind of pink undertone before and I did like it. So this is more like a standard, more tan skin, but this has potential, this pink color. I may work with it. Back a long time ago. Yeah. So because my room is a little bit colder today, I'm not getting paint drying quite as fast as I would wish it. I want this to dry so I can get to... And you can see how much extra paint I had on there. See that puddle? Like I put a lot of paint on for my base coats. And that's purposeful. Yeah, I think I do want to kind of work with this. I've got a gut feeling that I want the more red color. I can make it work. Oh, is the stream doing some hiccups? I'm not seeing anything off the top. So actually, given that, I think I am going to double down on this. Usually do 2 thin base coats on bones, just like everything I do. I want a solid base coat. My second coat is typically applied much thinner. You want the first coat to go on pretty thick with extra fluid because you're trying to avoid leaving brush marks and globs. But once you've got that solid first coat down, if you need to touch it up or it's just a little bit thin in areas, that's when you can go with much more of a thinner, smoother base for your second layer, less paint. There we are. All right, yeah, I like that reddish color. So you can start with this, which is very sunburn. It's a very sunburn color. And then you can highlight it up and get it to... Oh, curse, really? But that's right, Cornico. It's a sunburn. Yeah, it's a sunburn color. But it is a natural skin color. So the key here is I want to start with that color and then highlight it up going a little bit warmer so that you still get that feel of like sun and windburn. Something, when a fairer skinned creature is going to be out under the sun all the time, their skin's going to turn like brown or brownish red or whatever you're going to have, right? So wind and weather. I haven't done this sort of skin tone for a while because I haven't painted historicals for a while and I always would use it for those. But yeah, I like this red. All right, so now we're going to lighten up our next color a bit, but I'm going to use it. So we're going to go up to here. And this, remember, was just an additional drop of Griffin Golden Brown, which is a very yellowy color. That's why this looks more orange than pink. And then a little bit of Creamy Ivory as well to make it highlighted. So I'm going to start with this. as a transition. And then I'm going to go up lighter from here. So a little bit too much paint on my brush, but you can see the difference in the color. And I've got a little bit of a paint speck there. Might be able to take it off with my thumb. Yeah. Alrighty, so I'm just going to bring this in on the top of each of these muscles. And the shape of my highlight is going to vary with the shape of the muscle. For these flatter muscles, they're pretty standard, but they're also a little bulgy. They're a little rounded where they kind of bulge out, and so making your highlight a little round is advisable. Down here on the bottom, we're really only going to highlight above that first bit though. So even though these colors are very close together, they're different enough that you can see the effect when I begin highlighting. A plastic shaped form covered with green stuff. Covered with quite a bit of green stuff, one would think. So as you can see, those highlights coming in, and as we bring in this warmer color, we shift farther away from our initial pink, but we retain the redness of the tones. So when you first try this skin tone, it definitely looks like unnaturally pink and red and sunburned, as you point out. But as you work with it and cover more of it, because remember, you know, as you cover up this color, it'll still influence the overall appearance of the skin, but it won't necessarily look like this color anymore because we're covering up a lot of it. So this is, again, you might think this is a flat muscle, but all muscles are a little bit rounded where they bunch. And so I've done a little bit of a rounded, more oval highlight here. And here on the elbow is really a circle. We have a bit of a connector muscle here. So you're just going to touch that. This is a tendon. It's a pretty straight line. Upper part of the arm, I'm going to start blocking in pretty much all of it. It's again a connector muscle. Top of this muscle is going to get totally hit. Thank you, Zido Fresh. Thanks for the Prime sub. Nice to meet you as well. Welcome to the Reaper Miniatures daily stream, every weekday. We paint a different mini every day. We do a 6 mini rotation during the week. So I've been working on this Centaur, and we just started his skin tones. I did the fur pattern on the horse and the Appaloosa, and now I'm testing this skin tone to see if I like it or if I don't think it's quite what I was looking for. Right now I'm okay with it, but we'll see. A lot will change as we fill in the rest of the parts of the figure. We did some green stuff to hide some gaps and joins, which is why I'm just working on this one arm right now, kind of figuring out if I like the color. Going for something really sun and windburned for his skin tone. So that's why we started so red. Nomad Seek. I burn like crazy. Most of my lineage is German, but I've got some Celtic in there. way, way back. And I definitely got the propensity to turn lobster colored under sunshine. So biceps are always a round muscle. So you want to make the highlight rounded as well in shape. And if we do, right now we're coming up from what I imagine is a shadow, but I may actually go in and add darker shadows as well, because I may feel like I need more mass on these muscles. They're very heavy muscles. He's very ripped. So if I want to really bring that out, then I need to go in and shade as well. Ah, Zito Fresh. Yes, brushes. That's cool. It doesn't matter if I've answered it 100 times. If you're thinking it, someone else is wondering it. That's the rule for this show. Like, it's no question is we have answered it too many times. So today we are using kind of my workhorse brush that I use for everything. It is a Da Vinci Maestro. You can see the Maestro word. I'll show you a little bit better. This one is a Series 10, which is their normal round shape. The series is the shape of the brush. So this is a normal round, and then the size is 1. And their size 1 is fairly small in this particular brand and line. I really like the really thin, long pointed brushes, so that's what I like. Da Vinci is one of my favorite brands. Here's one that you can actually still read the Da Vinci on. Da Vinci, this one is a triple aught. This is the smallest brush I use. So it's like that. Comparing the two of them. There they are side by side. But yeah, so Da Vinci Maestro is essentially a Kolinsky sable, and Kolinsky sable is the top 2 grades of red sable. It is the highest quality sable in the world. So usually that's why you're paying more for these brushes. On the other hand, they are never going to like hook or splay for you if you take good care of them. So even if you're a beginner, if you take good care of your brushes and you don't leave them nose down in the paint water and you rinse them fairly frequently, and you know, that kind of thing, I advise even a beginner to pick up a good detail brush that's high priced, just because if you don't abuse it, it's going to last you for years, like literally years. I've been painting with this particular brush for 2 years now, and it still keeps a perfect point. Eventually, it will lose enough hairs that I can no longer use it, but it takes a long time, and I paint every day. Most people don't. So, I mean, I have a friend who's got Kolinsky sables, and he's had them for 5 years, and they're still perfect. He doesn't paint every day. So, and there's the tools thing. Yeah, tools link. But, yes, and then the other brand I like is Raphael. There's the Raphael. And this is also a size 1. And it's also a Kolinsky. This one's from France, though, instead of Germany. This one is a series number that's got more numbers. It's 8408, which is actually their pointed round. So it has a very long, thin tip, as you can see. But it is a size 1, and you can see that this is the difference in brands, is their sizes are different. And we all wish this wasn't so, but it is, and so you just kind of learn. The Raphael brushes are typically larger than the Da Vinci and Winsor Newton brushes. I don't know if I have a Winsor & Newton right now out on my table, but that is another good brand. Do I? Trying to see if I do real quick. There's also a brand from Russia, but I don't even know if you can get them right now for reasons. Reaper does a Kolinsky line that is a little bit more affordable. This is Reaper's Kolinsky. It will say Kolinsky. It's an Irish Kolinsky. And it also is it's a nice brush. I have this size 0, but the size I would recommend in the Reaper Kolinsky is a 0/5. I consider it the most utility size for painting miniatures. And when I was staff painter for Reaper on site for many years, that is the brush I would use. Oh, it's Trashorama! Look at what the cat dragged in. Just kidding, Trash. It's good to see you. I like it when you jump in every once in a while. Let me see if I can find... Oh, here you go. Here's a Series 7. So this is the other one, Zito. This is a brand that many people will mention to you. You can actually order them from Amazon, so they're easy to get if they're in stock. This is also a size 1. However, I think it's a miniature. Yeah, so okay. So let's talk about brush shapes real quick. Why not get distracted, right? Right? Oh, I've got a hair. I've got an errant hair. This is why I don't go for Winsor & Newton too much. I have an errant hair. So, all right, you see the errant hair? See that little hair coming off there? Yeah, so the way to remove those, it doesn't mean your brush is terrible, but you need to get between that hair and the rest of the brush with your knife, and then come down, bring them out so you can see them better. Then bring it down and go snick. I had 2. Snick. It's kind of between on the metal ferrule here. You can take them right off without wrecking your brush. So, all right, miniature series. This says, here is the Series 7, which is their Kolinsky sable. As you can see, Kolinsky sable. This is Winsor & Newton. This is an English Kolinsky. The Series 7, and this is a size 1, but it also says miniature. This does not mean that it is meant for painting miniatures. This means that it's a specific shape, and I have another example of this right here in the Escoda. Both these, let's see, this is at number 2 in the Escoda, and this is also Escoda Optimo. Again, Kolinsky. Are you noticing a trend here? Top level brushes are going to tell you they're Kolinsky. If it says best quality sable, guess what? It's not the best quality sable. This is from Spain, Barcelona. I'm not a huge fan of the Escoda, but actually this particular shape is really growing on me. But yeah, so there we go. And as opposed to a normal round, which is longer and slimmer, you notice these are more wedge shaped, right? They're shorter in the bristle. They're not nearly as long. And they start wider and they taper quickly to a wedge. So that's what the miniature series, Winsor & Newton Series 7, is going to look like for you. Do I have a Series 7 normal? One second. I think I do somewhere in here. It's just a matter of finding it. There. Yeah, okay. So sometimes it seems these days Winsor & Newton is trying to tell you that it's just finest sable, but that makes me question mark. However, this is a comparable size and shape to a typical Winsor & Newton. One second while I grab it. I dropped it. Okay, so the normal Winsor & Newton round shape is like this. So it's much more like my Da Vinci, right? And this is a normal round. It is a Winsor & Newton Series 7. This is a size 0 though, and the brush next to it is a 1. So this is where you really get into it. Bottom line, as far as sizes, I typically, in almost every line known to man, a size 0 is going to be fine for miniature painting. Some of your size 0s are going to turn out bigger. Some of them are going to be littler. But 0 in general will give you a pretty good brush as far as sizing for mini painting. Let me put these guys back. Some people will have a littler 0. Some people will have a bigger 0. Remember, the miniature series from Winsor & Newton is a wedge-shaped brush, not a long, narrow brush, etc. Yeah, I answered that, Crowley. Sorry. I did say that miniature series does not mean it is designed for miniatures. It's a different shape of brush. But yeah, so I have a couple of Winsor & Newton Series 7s. I do not use them. I've just found them to be more problematic than they're less consistent than my other brushes. And this is me talking, and I mean, I'm the person who has been using the Da Vinci Maestro Series 10 size 1 for over 20 years to paint my competition figures, and I have never had a bad brush yet. So I feel pretty, valid saying, yeah, Da Vinci's cool. Oh, that's fine. You can ask paint. Brushes require me to stop and explain because, a visual aid is worth 1,000 words. But I can answer paint questions while I paint. I'm just going to line at this point around this reddish color. I want to define it. I'm going to use dark color walnut, not a liner today. This guy is fairly big, and he's got really stylized features and kind of a chonky appearance. Like he's definitely not got a lot of tiny fine detail on him. So I'm going to use, that's part of why I wouldn't use a liner. I'm going with the walnut instead. Yeah, now we're curious, Zito. You got to ask. Yeah, I've heard that there are brush holders that you can just, slide a brush into if you need a thicker handle. You could also just honestly take some tape and wrap it around there and just hold the tape. If you're really looking to fix it fast, put a wad of tape around it, just like normal drafting or painter's tape, masking tape. Gonna go 2-to-1 with this walnut, so it isn't gonna be quite as strong as it could be, but it's still pretty opaque. Yeah, the pencil grip things. All right, I'm gonna put these sculpting tools out of the way here. There. Oh, tubule. Always keep your brush tubules too. Remember to always keep your tubules. The tubules that come with the brush, on the brush. Keep these, Zito. Keep them. Because when you maybe want to travel with your brushes, or you just want to protect them from your cat, putting that over the top while they're resting is a good idea. If you are you working with bones, Zito? Okay. Yeah. Have you washed your bones? Because it can be either. It can be either or both. And the other question to ask is how much you're thinning for your base coat. Normally, what I recommend is somewhere between 4-to-1 to 6-to-1. So 4 drops of paint to 6 drops of paint plus 1 drop of water for a base coat on bones. Yeah, then I would just say your paint's probably too thin. Even the paint that I'm using here, it's like a little bit thinner than that, which is why I needed to put 2 coats on, but it's probably not more. It's not less than 3-to-1. So I wouldn't bother to scrub. I'd try to thicken the paint first, Crows. I don't know if scrubbing, in my experience, really made a difference. I've never scrubbed a Bones Mini. I just wash it. It depends on the surface too. If it's in like a crack where it's not taking the paint, then I can see scrubbing with a toothbrush because maybe the soap just didn't get in there. But if it's anywhere on a top surface, I would say that it is a paint consistency problem. Do you know how much you've been thinning your paint, Zito? Do you have a ratio, or are you working on a wet palette? So I can be really messy with this line because I haven't painted this spear haft yet, so it doesn't matter. All I need to do is make sure that I'm not painting over the skin tone. Thanks, Corsair. See you around. Yeah. Okay, so Zito, here's the dealio. I usually say keep both types of palettes around, and when you're new, work with both. And the reason is that the wet palette will encourage you to paint a little faster and a little looser. It can be good for learning to mix. It can be good for kind of just learning highlight and shadow placement and faster painting in general. However, if you don't really understand paint consistency, as many people coming to this hobby don't, the well palette, particularly this one, which actually they linked in my tools command. This is a 28 well porcelain palette, and it's like $10. I have 2 or 3 of them. And the wells are very small, so you only have to use a small bit of paint in them, and it stays wet for a long time. Obviously, this whole stream, this stuff stayed wet. I had to add a little bit of water because there's less drops in here because this only had like 5 drops of paint. When you get up to like 6 drops of paint plus a couple drops of water, though, this stays good for a very long time, or at least an hour, without even adding more water. But what this does for you, the well palette, is that it lets you use ratios so that you can learn like what the paint feels like at like a 4-to-1 or a 5-to-1 or a 2-to-1. And so as you mix paint in these and you understand, 4-to-1, well, this is how it feels. This is how it applies. This is how thick it looks on the mini. This is how it flows. And then, you're like, oh, this is 2-to-1 for highlighting. This works pretty well with these colors, but not so much with these. I need to thin this one a little bit more. it lets you just set up where you can get to understand the consistency. You also can control the consistency. Unlike with a wet palette where your water is constantly being wicked down into the sponge or is seeping up into your paint through the sponge, from the sponge, that means you can't control it, not precisely. And when you are trying to learn paint consistency, this can really set you back. It can take you a while to internalize stuff. Eventually you will, and you'll be a pro, right? But you could also just learn the feel of the paint consistency here. I'm so familiar at this point with what a 2-to-1 consistency looks like and feels like that I can mix it on a wet palette, and I do pretty well with a wet palette. You can translate from one to the other. But I think the wet palette makes it very difficult for beginning painters to master paint consistency. And so I always recommend trying the well palette. You can always switch back to the wet. But having a well palette is also useful for when you start doing glazes or washes or whatever, because you can't really mix those on a wet palette. Does that make sense? Yeah, not so much here with me, Toofs. I mean, wasting paint is something I don't believe in, though. I know I counted. Because I made this paint line, I actually counted how many drops of paint is in one of these bottles. There are 400 drops of paint, generally, in one of these, 350 to 400. Once I realized that, I stopped caring about wasting paint, quote unquote, because, considering that there are only a few colors that I use all the time with everything, it still takes me 6 months to a year or more to run through a complete bottle of pure white, even with as much as I paint and using that color all the time. It probably takes me a year to a year and a half to run through a bottle of walnut, which is probably my second most used color. And when the bottles of paint are less than $4, I'm just like, I don't care about wasting paint anymore. Now, it's a little different maybe when I use the tube paint from Scale 75, because that does feel sometimes like I'm wasting a little bit of paint. But even then, it's taken me years. Like, I've been using stuff. If it takes me years to go through a bottle, I don't care about wasting paint anymore. But that's just what I came to, my own conclusion. But that's why I don't feel it that way. I do find, even so, but if you do have that, if you are like, hey, I don't want to waste paint, that's fair and valid. But I still recommend learning paint consistency on this, then switching back to the wet palette once you understand it. Like I said, you can always go back to whichever palette you like the best. But I feel like you're really making it hard for yourself to understand paint consistency on the wet. I feel like I've seen so many students struggle with it. Let's just put it that way. Now, some people do take to it right away. My fiance being one. And it seems like, they almost exclusively teach wet in Europe. So, people are definitely learning, right? So just my own experience with trying to teach people here, and I've been teaching for about 20 years in the States, teaching miniature painting. In here, I find that often it's a source of frustration trying to learn paint consistency on a wet. And my credo is kind of to help people avoid frustration, because I want you to love the hobby. And I want you to be able to reach your goals in the hobby. So, yeah. Yeah, it makes sense to get... You're right, Eat to Surf. When it costs so much to, get into the hobby, with all the different paints you have to start out buying, it does make sense to get a little stingy with it. Or just to get that mindset where you just, you don't want to waste any of it because it cost you so much to buy that paint set. That does... It makes sense to me. Like I said, I felt that way until I actually counted the number of drops, and I was painting full time, and I realized that it took me a very long time, even painting full time, to go through a bottle. So it's a mental thing. You either feel that way or you don't, and it's totally valid to act either way. It's your hobby. So that's really the bottom line. Yeah. If you took lessons with Luca, and he is a wet palette guy. Yeah, a lot of the Europeans are. And it's cool. I find it leads to a slightly different style of painting. And in some ways, I feel like it sets you up to learn some things like easier than others. Like I said, it totally will teach you to mix. Whereas I find that over here in the States, there's resistance to mixing a lot. Especially because a lot of the people coming to this hobby over here do not have an art background at all. And this United States, I mean, I love my country and all, but we really, really de-emphasize the value of art. Whereas Europe, I think they have a much better attitude toward like generally admiration of the arts and valuing the arts, right? I mean, just to give you an example from my own childhood, even as a kid, a clueless kid, I still got the fact that the school board would not give our art teachers any more money for supplies or anything because football program was considered more valuable than our art program. I shit you not. So I don't, that's a very common mindset here. Art is very devalued here. Yeah, LA valued art. Yeah, in a big city, I could see it. I could see the arts being a higher value. I grew up in rural Wisconsin. So that gives you an idea, right? I can see San Francisco, now that I live near San Francisco, valuing art more. I do feel like, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, New York. Some cities like the Bay Area here and New York City, they've had some pretty good mini painting communities for a while. Colorado is another area that has had a lot of good painters around as far as the state. Maybe Zito, maybe. I just know that as an artist, I run into it regularly. I ran into it when I worked in corporate America and told when I quit to essentially go full-time as an artist. It was a weird thing because my fellow employees, my fellow supervisors, you know, I was a lower level supervisor at that job, and you could tell that people were jealous, but you could also tell that they thought I was nuts. You don't do art for a living, you do art for a hobby. Uh-huh. And that was in Madison, Wisconsin. That was in like the capital. So I think, yeah, your experience, I will agree totally that your experience is going to vary here in the States depending on where you are, because there are definitely areas, districts, cities, and towns that value art more. I feel like Hawaii is also very art friendly as a state in general. Yes, you enjoy painting. Why should I pay you for it attitude? Yeah, that's common all over. Not with everyone. Yeah. Oh, you're an artist. What do you do for a living? Right. Yeah. Exactly. And I've made it work, but it definitely was hairy. Like I had to try freelancing twice. And the first time I definitely failed at it because, you know, working as an artist, you have to do the work or nobody else is going to do it for you. It's not like corporate America where you can just kind of skate by and get a paycheck sometimes. Like my corporate job was kind of like that. I didn't have to like work that hard. When you freelance, you have to work your butt off to make it as successful, especially freelancing in the arts. But I expect all freelancing, entrepreneurship in general is like that. It's all you. But yeah, I finally made it work now with the Patreon, which is patreon.com/paintingbig, by the way. For those who are interested in taking a look, I do have some free stuff up and some handouts. And obviously, you can watch my free stuff online here. The Patreon gives me the chance to do a bit more focused topics, though, without all the chit-chat. Just spotted a mold line, so I had to fix that. It's kind of the nice thing about bones, since you don't have to prime them or anything. You can just shave off a mold line and just rebase coat over the top of it and keep going. I kind of like that about bones. There we go. Yeah, Yeah, you're right that there is more money in painting game pieces than art pieces at the moment. And that is the way to tackle that is kind of to raise visibility, right? We talked about, myself and some other painters were talking about getting a new show started, kind of a show, meaning miniatures, juried art show competition thing. Sorry, I wanted a little more focus. To get a new one because Crystal Brush, went away. To get kind of an all company show. Kind of like Crystal Brush used to be. Maybe without the gigantic cash prizes. Maybe with them. We don't know. But we could use a show like that in America to raise visibility for the hobby. Adepticon was it made sense to have Crystal Brush at Adepticon because a lot of the European painters and, of course, people from Canada and the US as well would come to Adepticon because they could teach and, offset some of their expenses. So they were more likely to come and compete. But I feel like now we could use another show like that to raise awareness that miniature painting can be an art form. I think that's kind of step one. Yeah, fully finished quilt. People don't want to pay for the time. It's true. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, Twisted Oma. The quilting is, there's some serious art in that. My mom enjoys, she doesn't quilt herself, but she goes to quilting exhibitions and stuff because she really loves to see the work. She sends me pictures every once in a while. She did a lot of sewing. Actually, she started making her own clothes again. She's like, I'm sick of looking for stuff in the stores. I'm like, hey, Mom, want to make me some stuff? She's a good sewer. Mom used to, back when we were little, when I was a little baby, Mom did wedding dresses for money. She kind of had a side gig while I was a toddler. There we go. So now you can see how the arm is not so pink anymore. In person, it's not nearly. It's picking up a little bit more red on the camera. But as we work up on this, if we continue going more golden, we will balance out that reddish skin tone, but we'll still keep the feel of it underneath. Yeah, right, Kriniko. Yeah, don't you love that? Oof. Yeah, they don't. Or they just willfully want to, try to get something, It's, some people are just trying to get something for cheap. It's like, if you are going for a handcrafted item, that is not a good attitude to go in with. Right? All right, I'm going to mix my next highlight and put it on so you guys can see how this is going to shift. So let's grab my mixing brush. Oh, that's really cool, Kirst. Neato Fritos. So I'm going to start with this previous color. I'm going to drop another drop of Griffin Golden Brown in, another drop of Creamy Ivory. This is going to shift it. No, that would be way too intricate, Pendrake. You keep wanting a pattern on that, and I'm not feeling it. You can put it on your own mini. Then you'll see what a pain it is. I'm just adding a little bit more red to this, a little bit more of my base mix. There we go. That's nice. So now, kind of our succession. I've been mixing some of these back into my base skin, so it's looking a lot like that highlight or the shadow there right now. Neato Fritos, yes, totally. That probably comes from my high school days, and I still have kept it. Oh, yeah. No, yeah. People who sew, they hoard fabric. It's absolutely a thing. Same as miniatures. They've got the closet full of fabric instead of the closet full of minis. I know people like this. Except that it tends to expand out of the closet, and then they've got the entire room of fabric. Minis, you have to try a little harder to do that. Yeah, in our yeah. Oh dear. All right, so another highlight. We're gonna make this highlight smaller. We're still gonna pay attention to the shape of it though. So when I'm highlighting this round muscle here, I'm keeping the highlight also round. Like I'm making sure that it is a round shape that I highlight. Now again, I'm probably going to come in and darken down the shadows, but I wanted to get these highlights in so I could see it. See how it's looking. Everything changes. Like as you bring up highlights, as you bring down shadows, like the look of the piece will change and you have to make your next decision based on what you've got. See here. Yeah, and it depends on where you're selling too. If you've got a shop on the internet, or if you're going and selling your stuff at a Renaissance fair, or if you're at a little local street fair, you know, it varies what people's price expectations are. So now as we bring this highlight in, you can see the skin tone shift again, right? So more pink, and then coming up a bit more fleshy here. So every time you put on another highlight, if you're layering like this, your new highlight is smaller than your previous highlight. That's what creates the illusion of a blend. And skin tones are one of those areas where you do want that blend. You'll see people on busts do it with an airbrush, even if they have a lot of room and they have good control with the airbrush, just to get that smooth transition on the skin. I tend to do it with a brush because I'm not as comfortable with airbrush. And also I just enjoy brushwork. I like the look of it. I can usually spot an airbrushed piece and it looks beautiful, and you can get some beautiful subtleties with kind of different colors and glazing with the airbrush. But I do enjoy doing it with my brush, even though it takes a bit more effort. So here again on this bicep, you want a rounded, or in this case oval, since the bicep shape is an oval. As you highlight, you want to keep an oval shape to your highlight, and smaller than your previous oval shape. So as we get more and more tight with our highlights, we're seeing that skin tone come up, but it still has that ruddy undertone that says that it's been out in the weather. I'm thinking about doing an experiment though. I'm going to finish, we're almost out of time. Is it a Luca day, guys? Is it Luca day or is it Crafty Creative Day? Is it Alpaca Nation or Josh after this stream? Luca today? Okay, then I do need to stop on time. Yeah, I was going to say, so next time we come in, I'm going to do an experiment. Because we used ruddy leather for the primary color of our horse, I may try to do a ruddy leather glaze over the arm to see if it makes it be more in tune with the horse bits. Although right now I do like the color as far as compared to the horse bits, but I'm wondering if I could get a really cool effect by glazing with the horse color over the skin color. I'm very tempted to try this. I think I will. We won't do it today. We pretty much have finished much of our highlighting. I'm just going to do these fingers and then I'm going to put an end to it so that Justin can get Luca queued up. Justin or John, whoever is manhandling our stream today. There. So we've got all that color, and that's our skin tone right now. Oh, yeah, I'm pretty sure we have a Justin, Luca. I think Justin's in charge today. Oh, you can't find Justin? I assume somebody's here. Let me look to see and ask John if I can get on Discord real quick. You'll ping? Oh, Trash will take care of it. Thank you, Trash. Cool. So yeah, hang tight, Luca, and I'm going to end my stream and then we can go. Sure, the day I'm on time. We don't... I thought you were driving this boat. Usually it's Quindy driving the boat and we can all like just relax because Quindy gives us such a nice smooth ride, but John is here. Yay! You got it? Awesome. So John's going to take care of you, Luca. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. Today we messed around with skin tones. We talked a lot about brushes. So if you're interested and you just came in at the end of this stream, you can go back and rewatch the VOD or later on YouTube to see just different brands of brushes that I talk about, different shapes. What does a brush series really mean? Why do the sizes vary so much? Oh, well, we can't really control that, but we can complain about it. Yay! So here we go. I'm going to hand you over to John, Luca, and everybody else, and I hope you all have a fantastic day. Tomorrow preview. Bunny! Tomorrow is Bunny Day. Come back for the bunny. All right? Talk to you all later. Bye.